from CBS Sports.
And first pitch crushing. Deep left field. This is way back. Walk-a-walk.
Got a fantasy question? Email fantasybaseball@cbsi.com. Get ready to win your league.
Where fantasy becomes reality.
Now here's Frank, Scott, and Chris.
No Freddie Freeman or Carlos Correa signings just yet, but it was still a jam-packed weekend in Major League Baseball. Let's break it all down. Welcome into Fantasy Baseball today on Monday, March 14th. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Scott White and Chris Towers. We originally had busts planned for today, but there was just so much that happened. Busts will have to wait till later on in the week. Scott, I am sorry that the Braves haven't signed Freddie Freeman yet. How are you at this very moment?
My stomach is in knots, Frank. I feel nothing but dread in all areas of my life, and I am praying for resolution sooner than later, praying for positive resolution. I'm being a little dramatic for the entertainment of our audience, but only a little dramatic. I'm not lying when I say I've lost sleep over this. Dating back to December, I've lost sleep over this possibility that Freddie Freeman may not wear a Braves uniform next year. And there was a video going around from him being interviewed after the World Series by the Fox crew, who, the studio crew who covered the game, A-Rod and Frank Thomas and all of that, and just him. Freddie
I had
Freeman
no idea Frank Thomas was a Braves fan.
Yeah, from Columbus, Georgia, originally. He never played for the Braves. But anyway, and just like, it's so obvious that Freddie Freeman doesn't want to play for any team other than the Braves in that interview. Like, it just really brought it home. And just being reminded of that, it's like, it's obvious he wants to be there. It's obvious the Braves want, like, why hasn't this happened yet? And it's incredibly scary, Frank.
I hear you, man. Look, if he doesn't sign with the Yankees, obviously for my own selfish reasons, I hope that he goes back to your Braves. But if he doesn't, you've got some real questions when it comes to that team, because I can't figure it out for the life of me why they have not.
Yeah, no, it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt to watch them. I may need to take a break, at least for a while, until the hurting goes away, however long that takes. Obviously, not going to take a break while covering baseball because that's my job.
Which number do you think will be bigger? The contract that Freddie Freeman signs for, with whoever he signs for, or the surplus value that the Atlanta Braves will get out of Ronald Acuña and Ozzie Albies contracts combined?
I don't know.
I mean, if I gave you Freddie Freeman's contract plus $100 million, I still might take the Acuña and Albies contracts being a bigger number. So, like, the idea that they might let Freeman walk is just utterly and completely indefensible. Like, I don't care if you can get Matt Olson and get 80% of the production for, half the cost. It's not about that.
It's Freddie Freeman's team. Okay. Like that's the guy you don't cheap out on. You don't. And like, I'm sure he's willing to take less than the Dodgers could potentially give him is the thing. It's just how much before it becomes a matter of insult. Right. So what I
think it probably already is.
Well, impossible to know because like nothing leaks from the Braves front office since Alex Anthopoulos got that. So that part of the reason is just everything's in the dark. And that's part of what makes it scary. But my suspicion of what's happening is that the Dodgers have obviously offered him more. Maybe the Yankees have offered him more. But he still really wants to be with the Braves. So they're trying to get creative. Maybe a 6th-year team option with like a huge buyout or something. Maybe front-loading the contract. Just something atypical is trying to be negotiated here to make this work. And I really hope it happens.
Chris, at least it was a big weekend for one of our teams, right? The Marlins, they signed a fan favorite, a big beefy baseball boy, Willians Astudillo. So
one of the best players in baseball. It's a huge deal. Willians Astudillo, that really, it's the big bat the Marlins have been looking for. So
yeah, I mean, who needs?
I am extremely rooting for Willians Astudillo to make the Marlins, and if any listener out there wants to get ahead of it, buy me a Willians Astudillo Marlins custom jersey. Go ahead. I think we would all appreciate that.
All right, let's get into all of the latest, the trades, the signings, the biggest news from the weekend. Lots of bullpen things going on as well. And let's start with Sonny Gray, who was traded on Sunday. It was Sonny Gray and minor league pitcher Francis Peguero traded to the Minnesota Twins in exchange for 2021 first-round pick Chase Petty. He is a high school pitcher with a massive fastball, really good slider as well. We'll see if he can develop into a starting pitcher. But Scott, I mean, I know that typically, we did our starting pitcher previews recently, and didn't sound like you were excited to draft Sonny Gray, but this is a pretty nice park shift going from Great American Ballpark to Target Field. And while the service level numbers were not great for Sonny Gray last year, the underlying numbers were still pretty good. What do you think about this move for Sonny Gray?
Yeah, it doesn't really change my opinion much. Yes, Sonny Gray's splits last year were as you'd expect, given the park. He was pitching at 4.89 ERA at home, 3.44 on the road. Previous 2 years for the Reds, home away, they weren't that different. Like he's not a pitch. Like he gets his outs via ground balls and strikeouts. So yes, it can only help leaving Cincinnati, but how much is it going to help? Honestly, I think it really comes down to whether good Sonny Gray shows up or mediocre Sonny Gray shows up. And I've been faked out so many times by him over the years that I don't want to guess anymore. He's just somebody you get if you need some innings and need some strikeouts in the middle to late stages of your draft. And if he delivers on more than that, great, but you can't count on it.
Chris, Sonny Gray missed time last year due to back, groin, and rib issues in 10 starts before he hit the IL. He had a 3.42 ERA, almost 12 strikeouts per 9, and then 16 starts after returning from injury, a 4.64 ERA. The velocity for the fastball down a little bit as well. What do you think about Sonny Gray overall and this move to the Minnesota Twins?
I think he's a fine guy to have around. I don't think he's going to make or break your team either way, but he's the type of player that in the past, like Scott said, we've kind of talked ourselves into or tried to do the, he's peaking now, and it's just the inconsistency, both in the type of pitcher he's been and the results that he gets, has been such a part of his game for so many years that I think that's what you have to expect. Numbers probably high 3s, low 4s ERA, good strikeouts, but probably not going to get a ton of innings even if he stays healthy for the full season. So he's if you get him around his ADP, which is 177.7 in NFC drafts, I think it's perfectly fine. But he's definitely not someone that I'm consciously that I'm making a point to draft one way or the other.
Sonny Gray, you mentioned the ADP with the NFBC on Fantasy Pros. It is a little bit higher. He's going as the 48th starting pitcher off the board, 163.2. Scott, who would you rather have, Sonny Gray or, I know this might seem like an obvious answer, but Ranger Suarez, with the news last week that came out that, he's got visa issues and might not be ready for the start of the season. He's ADP, Ranger Suarez, he's about 10 picks higher, but I think that's probably going to come down a little bit. I think Sonny Gray will probably move up a little bit. Who would you rather have between those two?
I'd still take Suarez. I did move Suarez down a little bit. I don't think I'm going to move Sonny Gray up at all, but there were, I was one of the highest people on Suarez to begin with. So there's still a pretty substantial gap between the two for me.
Chris, who would you rather have, Sonny Gray or Logan Gilbert? They have nearly the same ADP, 163.2 versus 163.4.
I would rather have Gilbert. I do wonder if I'm falling for the younger guy has more upside, even if that might not actually be true in this case. Sonny Gray does have, a decent amount of upside, but yeah, I would rather take the chance on someone like Logan Gilbert, who, throws hard, has, at least prospect pedigree and the potential to have, multiple plus pitches and good command. So I would rather have him, but it's close-ish.
All right, let's move on to another trade that happened this weekend. Chris Bassitt traded to the New York Mets in exchange for, now I will admit this is a bad host job by me. Scott, do you know if it's JT Ginn or JT Ginn?
I don't
know either.
No,
so Chris Bassitt traded to the Mets in exchange for pitcher prospect JT Ginn and Adam Oller. Chris Bassitt's ADP right now, 130.8. He is the SP 39 off the board. And Chris Bassitt, it seems like annually undervalued in fantasy baseball. He's got a 3.23 ERA since the start of 2018. That's actually 15th best among qualified starting pitchers. However, brought this up recently when we were, again, doing our starting pitcher previews. Much better in his career in Oakland Coliseum, which is a great place to pitch. 2.44 ERA there, 3.71 career ERA on the road. Chris, this time we will start with you. What do you think about Chris Bassitt moving over to the New York Mets? Do you maybe downgrade him because it's not as great of a park to pitch? And it's still a pretty good park, though.
No, I don't think so. I don't think you downgrade him much because where Bassitt, last year he actually did take a step forward as a strikeout pitcher, and that was big. But where he's, really, made his money, I guess, over the past couple of seasons has been in, suppressing quality of contact. He's got a 355 expected WOBA on contact for his career. It's been lower than that each of the past 4 seasons now. And that is a place, that's one way in which Citi Field isn't necessarily a significant downgrade. It doesn't suppress home runs in the same way that the O.Co. or whatever we call that stadium now. I don't know.
Ring Central Coliseum.
Excuse me?
Ring Central Coliseum.
Sure. Yeah, that sounds right.
That's the
Citi Field does suppress BABIP decently, or batting average, I suppose is the other way to say that. So I don't think it's a huge downgrade for him. It is a downgrade, but not in a way that makes me particularly concerned. It's a weird profile because, we tend to prefer the strikeout pitchers. And if he goes back to being a 21% guy, then you're probably looking at a baseline expectation where his ERA is more in the high 3s range, I would say, in which case, if you're getting 160 or 180 innings, but only 140 or so strikeouts and a high 3s ERA, then it's like, yeah, who cares? But if he can sustain, not who cares, but it's like he's not a difference maker.
Yeah, sure.
But if he can sustain the strikeout gains he made last year, then I don't think the home park's going to matter much. So I'm not moving him down here.
I do think you undersold the splits there a little bit, Frank. I think you gave last year's splits, not the career splits. Career splits for Bassitt, 258 in Oakland, 434 everywhere else. So pretty drastic. But I don't disagree with the main takeaway there that he's probably less susceptible to that at this stage of his career than previous stages. And I think what this move means for Bassitt is it's unlikely you're going to see the low 3s ERA he gave you last year, but a mid 3s ERA is still pretty likely. And for the innings he gives you, and about a K per, hopefully, I don't think it's a huge downgrade.
Whoa, there's some stuff going on right now.
Oh, geez.
I am going to wait until we get complete details.
Wow.
Here.
Oh, no.
Things are still coming.
No, it's nothing about you. Actually, it might be.
No, it's not Freddie Freeman. Don't worry.
Look at that.
The New York Yankees are finalizing a deal to acquire third baseman Josh Donaldson and Isaiah Kiner-Falefa from the Minnesota Twins.
Yeah, he got traded to the Twins.
The Washington Nationals are...
Gary Sachez to the Twins.
The Washington Nationals are close to signing Nelson Cruz as well. All right, so there's a lot coming in.
So they exchanged Mitch Garver for Gary Sachez?
As the details come in, we're going to continue on. I'll talk about this Mitch Garver trade.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about the Mitch Garver trade yet.
It's all going to be related somehow, but as the details come in, we will, of course, get you them. Very interesting. Josh Donaldson and Garrett Cole in the same clubhouse, huh? That's very interesting. All right, we're going to see what happens here. I'm kind of excited about that. Josh Donaldson on the Yankees. Anyway, let's start about Mitch Garver, who was traded to the Texas Rangers. Now, this is really going to be the start of all of this. Again, it sounds like Gary Sanchez is now going to the Minnesota Twins, but Garver to the Texas Rangers in exchange for Isaiah Kiner-Falefa and Ronnie Enriquez. And Scott, maybe a slight downgrade in Park. I mean, very slight. We're still trying to figure out Globe Life Field. But anyway, like Mitch Garver, I think while there might be a slight downgrade there, the fact that he might play more consistently now, like if he's healthy, he might actually have more playing time with the Rangers than he did with the Minnesota Twins. What do you think about this move for him?
Yeah, for my money, this is the most impactful fantasy move of the weekend, because the problem for Mitch Garver, the only reason he wasn't being drafted easily within the top 10 is because playing time concerns. And obviously going to the Rangers, there's no guarantee there's no guarantee of health. So that's still a question mark. But the bigger concern for me was, even when he was healthy, the Twins seem inclined to split his at-bats with Ryan Jeffers. And so the hope with this move is that the Rangers just want to make him straight up the first string catcher. And if that's the case, then he could be a very prolific one. I mean, he was third among catchers in OPS last year, 875. I believe the only two ahead of him were Yasmani Grandal and Buster Posey, who's now retired, obviously. So third among catchers in OPS last year, first among catchers in OPS in 2019 with a 995 OPS, hit 31 home runs that year, even though he really didn't take over as the primary catcher until later in the year. So I think by now it's pretty safe to say Garver is an impact bat at a position with very few. That's why I was thinking he was a value already, because it's like, why not shoot for upside at this position? But now it doesn't even feel like that big of a gamble, So I've moved him ahead of Tyler Stevenson. I moved him ahead of Keibert Ruiz, at least in categories leagues. I kept Ruiz ahead for now in points leagues because the strikeout rate is so low, and that matters in points leagues. But Garver is now like a top 7, top 8 catcher for me, with upside to be top 5, I think.
All right, Chris, what do you think about?
Do you one better, Scott?
Oh boy.
Oof. All right, hit me.
I've moved him to number 6.
There you go.
Both actually number, was it 6? Let's see. 6 in Roto. I've moved him ahead of Wilson Contreras. I just think he's a better hitter. And in points, I believe he's number 7. I do still have Wilson Contreras ahead for points leagues because, he should have a playing time edge. But yeah, I just, you just look at what he's done over the past 3 seasons, and it's like a 250 average and 870 OPS, and that's including his miserable 2020 season. So,
which was weird, and he had an intercostal strain. It was like 20 games that he played or something.
Yeah, so I like you said, you're looking for difference makers at the position. Mitch Garver's one of the few. I think he's more of a difference maker than Wilson Contreras.
All right, so moving on up is Mitch Garver. You guys basically answered my questions about where you're going to be ranking him, moving ahead of Tyler Stevenson for sure. What's crazy is, do you actually think that this will be reflected in the ADP? Because Mitch Garver was basically going 40 picks after Adley Rutschman in ADP, 50 picks after Keibert Ruiz and Tyler Stevenson, who are going in like the same exact range. Do you actually think, Scott, that Mitch Garver will push those guys, or will he just remain undervalued because we're already pretty far, I guess, in the draft season, in the off season?
I think he'll get drafted earlier. Will he push those guys in ADP? I don't know. I mean, I think the opinion we just gave on him seemed to be the consensus based on the stuff I was seeing on Twitter. So the people who might have been undervaluing him before maybe won't now. Will they still take Tyler Stevenson ahead of him, who's been a pretty buzzy player himself? I think probably. I'm not saying they should. I don't think they should.
I can make a case for Adley Rutschman and Keibert Ruiz ahead of Mitch Garver, even if I was like just trying to do the intellectual exercise of making the case for Tyler Stevenson over Mitch Garver, I don't think I could come up with a good one. I don't think there's anything there with Tyler Stevenson that would make him a better fantasy option than Mitch Garver, unless you think he's just going to get like 150 more plate appearances, which I don't think he is. I don't see any skills with Tyler Stevenson honestly, I don't see any skills that stand out, just period. But I don't see anything that comes close to Mitch Garver's power that makes him worth targeting in fantasy.
All right, before we get to Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, who again now looks like he's headed to the New York Yankees, let's just quickly put a bow on this trade. Ryan Jeffers, I think there is some fallout here for those who play in two-catcher leagues, deeper two-catcher leagues, and AL only. Ryan Jeffers, 14 home runs in 85 games last year with the Minnesota Twins. Scott, he basically takes over as the starting. Well, no, he's not going to be the starting catcher now because they just acquired Gary Sanchez. All right, let's talk about all of this now. The latest trade.
Something else happened, Frank. I don't know if you caught it. Nelson Cruz to the Nationals on a 2-year deal.
Is that official?
Because I hate that. I hate everything about it.
Okay.
Official? Well, people are running with it. Let's see. Who was it reported by? Hector Gomez.
Okay. I'm seeing that it's very close. They're moving closer, but I haven't seen
Hector Gomez, MLB insider. He tweeted breaking news: the Nationals signed Nelson Cruz to 2
and
years.
he is, I believe, he's very plugged in with Dominican players.
Okay.
Hector Gomez. He tends to get a lot of scoops. So I would think that's probably pretty good to go with.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, again, like Ken Rosenthal tweeted it out 6 minutes ago that they're in serious talks, Nelson Cruz and the Washington Nationals.
But you want to see it from Rosenthal, Frank. That's what you're saying.
I want to see it from a few other sources, but again, we could talk about it if, the potential of it actually happening. Let's talk about the other part of this trade. Again, the latest, Josh Donaldson and Isaiah Kiner-Falefa now traded to the New York Yankees in exchange for Gary Sanchez and Gio Urshela. I do believe the Yankees also received backup catcher from the Minnesota Twins. So I guess that would leave Kyle Higashioka and now that new catcher.
Is this a stupid question?
What?
Is Isaiah Kiner-Falefa going to play catcher for the Yankees? Because
No.
Kyle Higashioka and Ben Rortvet
it's not
might be the worst catcher combination in baseball.
It's not
That
great,
is abysmal. They have to have an upgrade somewhere coming.
I know that Garrett Cole does like Kyle Higashioka himself. I mean, it's like a personal catcher thing. Anyway, let's talk about Josh Donaldson. I mean, this is a huge deal. I mean, I guess we're probably going to see his value, I would say, climb quite a bit. The ADP for Josh Donaldson right now is 193.6. And we've consistently talked about him as an undervalued player all season, basically. I mean, he's older. Yes, he misses time due to injury. But Scott, when Josh Donaldson plays, he's really, really good. And now he's likely going to be in the middle of the Yankees lineup. So what do you think about your instant reaction to Josh Donaldson on the Yankees?
I mean, my instant reaction is it sounds like a bigger deal. It's one of those. The majority of moves are a bigger deal to the real baseball world than the fantasy baseball world. But I don't know that it really changes my opinion on Josh Donaldson that much. I think some of the other factors in this deal, like my mind goes to Jose Miranda. Now I know they're getting, let's see, Gio Urshela is going back to the Twins in the deal, but the Twins sent their entire left side of the infield to the Yankees, and Urshela, was playing shortstop down the stretch last year. Jorge Polanco can play shortstop. Miranda has gotten time at third base and second base in the minors, and they have an opening on the infield now at either one of those spots or at shortstop. Or Jose Miranda's not going to play shortstop, but the point is, if they wanted him to make the opening day roster, as things stand right now, there's room for him too.
All right. Yeah, really good point. I know Jose Miranda is someone we all like here as well. Massive season in the minors last year, maybe getting more of an opportunity to play with the Minnesota Twins. Chris, I mean, I don't think it's completely ridiculous. I've had some people already tweeted me asking, is Isaiah Kiner-Falefa going to play catcher for the Yankees? My initial reaction is I don't think he would. It seems like, they want better infield defense, and it's something that they truly value, and it seems like that's why they wanted Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. What do you think about his value? I mean, his ADP is 324. If he's an everyday player for the Yankees, give you some batting average, a couple of steals. He had 8 homers, 20 steals last year. IKF over to the Yankees. What do you think, Chris?
My initial reaction when he got traded to the Twins initially was Isaiah Kiner-Falefa is probably undervalued. And I think that's more true now that he's with the Yankees, assuming that he's going to play every day, which I think we would expect just because of how much we're paying for stolen bases. I mean, maybe we don't buy him as a 20 steal guy, and he was an 8 steal guy the year before in 58 games, so I'm not sure it's outlandish to think he can be a 20-ish steal guy. I'd rather have, I know they play different positions and Edman has some flexibility, but I'd rather have Isaiah Kiner-Falefa with my 18th round pick than Tommy Edman with my 8th or whatever you usually have to pay for him if I'm in a roto league. So I think he's definitely a winner here, and I think he's probably just undervalued in general.
All right, yeah.
He hasn't played catcher since 2019 for what it's worth. He was.
Yeah, I think I think Chris was joking when he first mentioned that.
It's more a comment on how bad the catchers that they currently have.
Right. It was a jokey way of commenting on that. No, I mean, Kiner-Falefa is one of the best defensive shortstops. So I think that's his home now.
I don't really understand. It still seems like the Yankees have a logjam here because even if Donaldson plays third base, or I guess he could DH, but they have so many different players that are eligible to DH.
Could he play first?
Maybe. What would that mean for Luke Voigt? Is he on the move next? They still have DJ LeMahieu that they have to fit in somewhere, whether he wants to play third base. It seems like Gleyber Torres is playing second. They don't want him to play shortstop. That experiment is over. So,
it feels like the Yankees have multiple moves left. I don't know what they will be. I don't know who they will involve or what positions will be, but the current Yankees roster doesn't look anywhere close to finished.
All right. And again, going back to the Minnesota Twins, now let's talk about, Gary Sanchez and Gio Urshela. Scott, you talked about some of the fallout that Jose Miranda maybe gets more of an opportunity to play here. I was just about to ask you about Ryan Jeffers, who once the Mitch Garver trade happened, I thought, he'd be the starter, but now obviously they have Gary Sanchez and Gio Urshela. What do you think this does for their value moving over to the Twins?
I don't think it helps. Obviously Yankee Stadium is known to benefit left-handed hitters more, the short porch and right field and all of that. And I don't know top of mind how much power they produce to the opposite field. But, in theory, it's a lesser lineup. In theory, it's a worse venue. I kind of think Gary Sanchez is in a spot where a change of scenery can only help.
Yeah, I think that's the whole thing there.
I'm not, how much is that worth to me in terms of draft capital? Almost zero. So
I guess the one thing I would think of when I think of Gary Sanchez in this context would just be that the Twins have done a really good job the last few years of, I don't know if honing is the right word, but of getting the most out of this type of player, I guess. Byron Buxton being another free swinging aggressive player with a lot of raw talent. And so maybe there's something there that they can identify some of the flaws in his swing. And then the Twins, I think when they broke the record for home runs a couple years ago, it was, with a lot of pull heavy power guys. And so maybe, that is certainly Gary Sanchez, and he's still, whatever else you want to say about him, he still crushes the ball. He doesn't do it very often, but he hits the ball extremely hard. And so it's a bet on I don't know if you'd say an elite talent at this point, but a high level talent. I think it's interesting.
Now that we have the complete terms of the deal here, unless there's something I'm missing, they gave up Donaldson and Kiner-Falefa for Sanchez and Urshela, right?
And Ben Rortvedt was also...
Yeah, but the Twins also gave him up. So, right. Kind of minor league catcher. You just match up the names there. Donaldson, Kiner-Falefa for Sanchez and Urshela. just matching up the names, it looks like the Twins gave up more than they got, right? And that to me, considering they just used Garver to get Kiner Falefa to make this deal, they must value Sachez more than Garver.
Yeah, I think so.
So I don't think any of us believe they should, but they have their own scouting network that apparently.
And there's Dan Hayes, Twins writer for The Athletic. Twins aren't done doing whatever they are doing, especially after all of Josh Donaldson's $50 million comes off the books, which seems like a big part of it because
there was some salary contract relief in the deal. Yeah.
Quote, lots of irons. So, I think that's both of these teams seem incomplete right now. The Twins probably more so than the Yankees, but this is kind of happening in real time, and I feel like we are dealing with incomplete information in the aftermath of this deal.
Yeah, and as more information comes in, of course, we will get that to you. Scott, you have Gary Sanchez ranked as your 10th catcher in Roto, and Chris, you have him all the way down at 23.
Whoa.
So do you foresee moving Gary
Probably
Sanchez
going to
up?
move him up, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know where to. I just... I'm in some respects, I'm kind of just done with it. And
I tried to talk myself into Gary Sanchez last year, and it did not work very well.
I think when he was with the Yankees, there was downside risk of just bottoming out, like losing playing time, being benched, like not playing at all. I think that's extremely unlikely with the Twins, given what they've given up for him. So I do think I have to move him up. I don't know if 10 would be the right answer, but yeah, probably mid-teens, I would guess.
Okay. And I guess last part here, let's just say Kyle Higashioka is the starting catcher for the Yankees. I mean, the batting average has been dreadful. He does have some pop. He had 10 home runs in 67 games. Scott, any interest in, deeper two-catcher leagues if Higashioka is indeed the starting catcher for the Yankees?
He'd be one of the least appealing starting catchers out there. So it would have to be the sort of league where literally every catcher who gets at bats is drafted.
He's like your classic, like low end number 2 fantasy catcher. Like he might hit 15 home runs or 16 home runs with a 200 average. I don't seem like, I don't know, maybe the Yankees really like him. There are some somewhat interesting things in his batted ball profile. He does hit the ball well, and he's a good framer, which isn't a fantasy relevant thing, but for playing time purposes. But yeah, I think he's pretty bad.
So all right. I do have a bit of a take here. Josh Donaldson, again, the ADP 193.6 according to Fantasy Pros. I think over the next couple of weeks, he closes the gap on Justin Turner. I think he moves up about 40 spots. Justin Turner's ADP is 151.8. Whether it's deserved or not, I think it's just going to be like a Yankee tax, and people are going to get really excited about this move. And Donaldson is going to come close to being drafted in the same range as Justin Turner. I think that's really going to happen.
I think a 40 homer season is not out of the question for Josh Donaldson still, even at this point in his career. And I say this 60% as a joke, but 40% serious. The Yankees training room is going to get a real workout. I mean, that was already true before this, but between Stanton, Judge, Gallo, and now Donaldson being added to that mix with his calf injuries over the past couple of years and just generally being a 37-year-old or 36-year-old, there's real research that's been done that shows that in sports, when injuries tend to beget injuries on a team-wide basis. It's not like this massive effect, and it's not consistent across all sports in the same ways, but generally speaking, the teams tend to reach a breaking point when it comes to injuries where they start to, things tend to roll, downhill really quickly in some situations. And I think the Yankees have seen that in recent years, but it's the kind of thing where you only have so many trainers and they only have so many hours in the day to work on rehabilitation and or just, getting guys fresh or keeping guys fresh. So when more of their time is spent on dealing with injured players, and then you start having to put, more on a Stanton or a Donaldson if a Judge is out or something like that, where these guys, tend to get pushed past their breaking points in ways that I do think it introduces more team-wide risk for the Yankees.
Yeah, no, I think all really good points. They have a lot of injury-prone players on this team. We'll see if they can keep those guys on the field. Nelson Cruz to the Washington Nationals has been confirmed as well. We'll get to that in just a second. But first, March Madness is here. We want you to compete with us in a bracket challenge game. I'll be in there. Scott will be in there. Chris will be in there. And we want you as well. Join us at cbssports.com/FBT brackets. And the winner gets a $100 gift card to Paramount Plus. You're able to watch NCAA tournament games on P+, tons of soccer from the Champions League to CONCACAF, golf majors in the spring, and NFL football in the fall. Also, we're excited for the debut of Halo, which is streaming March 24th exclusively on Paramount Plus. Head to ParamountPlus.com/Halo to try it for free. Someone who grew up playing Halo, I am very excited. This series looks awesome. So for all these reasons, sports, Halo coming, make sure to check out Paramount Plus. But back to the brackets. Who enters just one pool? You can also create a group to compete against friends and fill out your bracket for the chance to win a trip to the 2023 Final Four. It's free to enter. You can play on the CBS Sports app or again at cbssports.com/FBT brackets. And if you need help filling out those brackets, CBS Sports HQ has you covered with nonstop coverage of every game from every region of the NCAA tournament. Join our experts for the most comprehensive breakdowns and streams. CBS Sports HQ all week long. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, Nelson Cruz to the Washington Nationals. We'll break it down here on Fantasy Baseball Today. All right, so let's talk about Nelson Cruz to the Washington Nationals. Didn't really see this one coming. We heard a lot of rumors of the Padres and the Dodgers involved on Nelson Cruz. He gets 1 year, $13 million guaranteed, it looks like, with a mutual option for 2023. And if nothing else, this just makes me feel better about the other pieces in the Nationals lineup. Like, I think Nelson Cruz is going to do his thing regardless. Obviously, he's got to stay healthy. He's 41 years old, but Chris, this makes me feel even better about guys like Josh Bell and Lane Thomas leading off for that lineup and Juan Soto. So what do you think, Nelson Cruz to the Washington Nationals?
I don't feel better or worse about Juan Soto. He's arguably the best hitter in baseball. I don't think the presence of Nelson Cruz changes that one bit. But yeah, it makes the lineup look a little better, and it's a lineup that frankly looks pretty awful. Even with the presence of some guys that Josh Bell and Juan Soto are good. Nelson Cruz is a great hitter, which gives them three guys that I'm confident will be good hitters in 2022. So that team can certainly use the help, and the top five of that lineup now looks okay. The bottom four is a problem. Alcides Escobar is currently slated to be the starting shortstop for the Washington Nationals this season. That's going to be a bad lineup, even with Nelson Cruz. But I don't know. I don't understand it, really. I don't understand why the Nationals would add Nelson Cruz and why Nelson Cruz would agree to sign with a team like the Nationals. Maybe they'll let him pick where they trade him in July when they're 15 games out of first place. I don't know. I'm kind of confused by it.
All right. The ADP for Nelson Cruz is 153.2. And Scott, I think part of the reason why that ADP is as low as it is because Nelson Cruz wasn't signed yet. Now he's signed. I think there's a chance that he starts to move up a little bit. What do you think about the value here for Nelson Cruz and maybe how early you're willing to select him yourself?
Yeah, I think part of it, I agree, is because he hadn't signed yet. Part of it is because for the first time in a long time, he looked kind of vulnerable after joining the Rays. His overall numbers with them, 226 batting average, 725 OPS. But as we've talked about in recent weeks, if you look at the home-away splits during his time with the Rays, at home, and obviously these are small, even smaller samples of already small samples, but still, at home, he hit 211 with a where's the OPS? 603 OPS at home. But away with the Rays, still 236, but again, small samples of small samples. the OPS was 812. Like he definitely was still hitting for the kind of power we're used to seeing from Nelson Cruz. And, the exit velocities were still high. I think Tropicana Field is just, for some players in particular, a really horrible place to hit. We've heard that with Willy Adames. And it just makes sense. I mean, knowing what we know about the ballpark, the roof is a shade of white and the lighting isn't very good.
Weird. It's just a weird, it's a weird stadium.
Yeah. So I think that might be the primary explanation for why Nelson Cruz's numbers with the Rays were what they were. And obviously he's not going to be with them anymore. So will he go up now that he's signed? Will he move up in ADP? Probably to a degree. But I still think he'll be a nice value for people who are willing to roll the dice on the age and the health, which, that's obviously been a good gamble for at least the last half decade.
All right, Chris, would you rather have Nelson Cruz at 153.2 or Josh Donaldson at 193? So basically 40 picks apart.
Cruz. I think both will be good hitters, though. I don't think there's much question for me, but I do think Donaldson has more risk of injury. I mean, he's dealt with more injuries, even though Cruz is older. Cruz has actually been, pretty consistent in terms of his availability. So I'm not too concerned about it.
All right, let's get to some injury updates that we received over the weekend. And according to Marley Rivera of ESPN, Ronald Acuña is hopeful that he'll be cleared to return to game action in May. So all along, this is what we thought was going to be the case. And as of now, that's the latest update that we saw. There was also another report where manager Brian Snitker said the Braves will have to see Acuña in camp before delivering a timetable for his return. So, some confliction there, I guess. But overall, I think we're still looking at May for Ronald Acuña. So, Scott, based on this most recent update, there was more optimism. Ronald Acuña seemed to be climbing in drafts. The ADP is 9th overall, just ahead of Mike Trout, Mookie Betts, Kyle Tucker. Do you now slide Ronald Acuña back behind those names?
I never moved him ahead personally because the last we heard any sort of estimate was still May. And, that's not as big a percentage of the season that we're talking about missing as it was before they pushed opening day back a week. But still, I mean, even more than, chop off this percentage of his projected numbers because he's going to lose that much of the season, as we can't really be sure how much of the season he's going to lose. It's an estimate of when he's going to return. And there's, by the time we're forced to put our teams together, there's still a lot of hurdles he's going to have to clear. So I can't take him ahead of any of those other first rounders. I think mid round 2, when you start looking at like the Luis Robertses at the position, it's a weird thing we do, right? We pluralize the guy's name. I still think mid second is where I'm looking to take Acuña.
Would you rather have Acuña or Luis Robert?
I mean, that's the line, right? I guess Acuña.
All right.
So. Yeah.
I
don't think I'll be faced with the choice, thankfully.
I'm moving him down a little further than that, actually.
Okay.
I'm moving him down to like the George Springer
always
range.
Has to one up me. Chris always has to one up me.
The George Springer range for most people is like 40th. I'm more like early third, but yeah, I'm moving him to 28th overall, sandwiched between George Springer and Byron Buxton, which feels like a good place for him. I think he'll be better than those guys, but those guys, all three of them have injury concerns, obviously, but George Springer and Byron Buxton are currently healthy and currently able to play baseball as far as we know. So yeah, I mean, it's always tough because like I always like to point out that when a player gets hurt, you don't just get zeros for them. So like you could plug in a replacement player for Acuña and get numbers there, and combine that with his projections, he probably looks pretty close to a first round pick, but you have to consider the risk of injury or not of injury. Well, of injury also, but the risk of him not running as much. If he's not going to come back until May, and he's not necessarily going to be like, maybe he won't be fully comfortable running at full speed or stealing bases as often as he does at the start of the season, or maybe at all. Maybe they just don't want him to run to be a 30 steal pace guy. All of a sudden, then he's an awesome player either way. You're looking at a mid to high 900s OPS bat no matter what. But it introduces just enough concerns, I think, to drop him down.
All right, I'm seeing this tweet from Ken Rosenthal, getting more clarity on the Yankee situation. Still in the market for a left-handed hitting first baseman. Freddie Freeman, Matt Olson, Anthony Rizzo will be better defensively if they get one of those players, and better at shortstop with Kiner Falefa. Potentially 5 infielders for 4 spots. First baseman to be named: Gleyber Torres, Kiner Falefa, Josh Donaldson, DJ LeMahieu.
Free Luke.
All that offense, that wasn't working for us. So we're going to go totally the opposite direction now. Our entire offense is Judge and Stanton, and you guys just go out and field the ball.
Well, that Josh Donaldson guy can hit.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
And Freddie Freeman, I don't know if you know this, Scott, but he's a decent hitter if they got him.
I can't even. We'll wait till it happens. I don't even want to think about the possibility of that happening because I don't think that my brain can handle it right now. Massive news on Zack Wheeler Sunday as well. He had shoulder soreness in December when he first started his throwing program. Apparently, the soreness dissipated quickly, but he's behind schedule and will not be the opening day starter. So GM Dave Dombrowski and manager Joe Girardi said the plan is to go slow with Zack Wheeler this spring after his heavy workload in 2021, 216 innings pitched, I believe it was last season. And it's not out of the question for Wheeler to be ready, the first week of the season, first couple of weeks, whatever it might be, but he will not be the opening day starter. He is the SP7 off the board. His ADP is 24.6. Chris, I'll start with you. What do you think about this news on Zack Wheeler? How far are you looking to drop him down your starting pitcher ranks, if at all?
I don't think there's any way you could not move him down. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm overreacting. I know in the instant wake of news like this, there can tend to be some overreactions and some chicken littling. But I'm definitely concerned about Zack Wheeler at this point because the primary argument in his favor was safety. He might not have the ratios of some of these other guys. He might not be the 12K per 9 guy. But look at this. He's thrown 190 innings in two of the past 3 seasons, maybe 3 of the past 4. He hasn't had any injury concerns over the past 4 seasons since coming back from that Tommy John surgery. He's a really rock steady ace. He maybe doesn't have the upside, but now what does that mean? Because I don't know that that was the primary argument for taking him in the second round. The primary argument for taking him in the second round was he was almost the Cy Young winner in the NL last season. Right, but Corbin Burns was a lot better than him last season.
Okay.
It's just that Zack Wheeler threw 40 more innings.
Wheeler and Burns, there's no debate there anymore. If there ever was. I don't remember the last draft I saw where Wheeler went ahead of Burns, but clearly that's not. But if we're talking about Wheeler versus Sandy Alcantara,
sure.
are you moving Wheeler outside of your top 10?
What would be the case for Wheeler over Alcantara at this point? He was a little bit better last season, but now Alcantara's
proven.
Alcantara's.
I think this is a nothing burger, honestly. His shoulder got sore when he threw in December, and we can't completely discount the possibility that a sore shoulder is an indicator of structural damage. But there's no indication of structural damage right now. In fact, this is the way he described it. I'm feeling good. I just got off to a slower start throwing wise, just a slower start, really. I threw it and was a little sore, so I shut down, started throwing again, and I'm just a little behind because of that. It's nothing concerning. We had time. I knew we had time, so I wanted to play it safe and make sure I built up like I usually do, like I need to, and just be safe with it. I go out and play. If I were to play a game of catch for 15 minutes, my shoulder would probably be sore for a week. So I'm just not sure I'm that moved by a sore shoulder without any reason to believe there's structural damage. And based on the way he's talking, it sounded like an abundance of caution situation. So yeah, I'm moving him behind Bieber. I'm moving him behind DeGrom. I don't want to take him in the second round anymore. But if he's there in round 4 and Salvador Perez isn't, I'm going to take Wheeler, obviously.
I think that's the right range too. So I put out a poll on Twitter asking, where people plan to rank Zack Wheeler with this news coming out. Is he still a top 10 starting pitcher? Is he in the SP 11 to SP 20 range? And that's what received the most votes. So SP 11 to SP 20 range, 42.5% of the vote. I dropped him down to SP 12, just behind Aaron Nola and Lucas Giolito. I don't know if that's the right answer. I mean, that's just kind of like my knee-jerk reaction right now. I'm not completely confident in that ranking, but I think if I was doing a draft today, we actually have a draft coming out later today for those watching on demand, Monday, March 14th. We're going to have a head-to-head category draft, so it'll be interesting to see where Zack Wheeler goes in that one. But that's where I initially dropped him to. What do you guys think about that range? SP 12, just behind Nola and Giolito.
I think it's fine. Yeah, I've saw some people talking about he's in like Joe Musgrove range now or something, and that seems like a major overreaction. I still want him amid the sort of pitchers I can reasonably expect to contend for the Cy Young. I'm not going to have him as low as you have him.
Okay,
but it's going to be close enough. And obviously we're going to find out more over the weeks. Like, we're going to get updates on Zack Wheeler's status that may influence us one way or the other. So we're just kind of an initial reaction. But based on what I'm seeing, based on the way the Phillies are talking about it, Wheeler himself is talking about it, doesn't sound like a big deal.
All right, Chris, do you have an official ranking on Zack Wheeler?
13th.
13th. All right. So
okay. I mean, my pitchers are lower just in general. Like, he's 56th in my overall ranking, so I'm just lower on pitchers in general. But yeah, similar range among pitchers. I think I'm always wary of the injury to a pitcher, or the whatever we don't want to call it an injury, the soreness, or the thing that derails them during the prep for the season. Because like Shane Bieber and Jack Flaherty had shoulder issues last season, and I think Wheeler probably not as good as Shane Bieber, probably better than Jack Flaherty if all are healthy. But now you're dealing with, he's dealt with an injury during the cycle of this season, whereas as far as we know, Flaherty and Bieber have not. They are healthy currently. And maybe Wheeler is just healthy right now. Maybe it's an overreaction, but it's just he's got the thing during this season cycle that the other guys don't yet. And so I do think that's more of a red flag than it might otherwise seem given how he's talking about it. So I'm always wary with pitchers of things that disrupt the start of their season. It seems like things tend to snowball with pitchers, and it's like the small thing ends up being a big thing in the end.
I mean, I could get that argument too. Just like, because he's behind, he pushes himself harder to catch up
in a shorter spring.
Yeah, I could see that. But I mean, you could say that for every pitcher, given the way the spring is going to play out.
But I also at
what point, at like round number in a 12-team league, like when Wheeler's there, you feel like, oh, I have to take him.
I don't know if I've drafted him at all this year, so I'm generally out on him at the price anyway. But probably 5th, I would say, is where 5th or 6th.
Well,
the one thing I will say is we're also treating Zack Wheeler as if last year was the new baseline, or something like last year, and it's worth remembering he had an 18% strikeout rate in 2020, which is less of an outlier for his career than what last year's was. He was 23, 24% before 2020, coming back from the injury. So I also have some concerns about performance with him.
All right, let's stick with the Phillies here. Again, a few other injury updates. Starting pitcher Zach Eflin is ahead of schedule, coming off knee surgery in September. He's already thrown several bullpen sessions and is on target to open the season on time. His ADP is 411 for those in deeper leagues, and only some deeper mixed leagues as well. Some good news here for Scott. Charlie Morton threw a 20-pitch bullpen session Sunday and already faced hitters a few times this spring. Sounds good to me, coming off that fractured tibia. Justin Verlander threw 35 pitches across 2 simulated innings on Sunday. No reports of any kind of reaction there, or, and nothing bad. So that's if there's nothing bad, then I'm going to take that as good news for Justin Verlander as of now. Max Muncy took batting practice and fielded some grounders on Saturday. Dave Roberts said that he expects Muncy to be ready for opening day in some capacity and that Muncy is 85% recovered from his elbow injury. Chris, does this make you feel any better about Max Muncy? I know that you were the optimist on him all along.
This is pretty much what I've expected over the past week or so, as we've heard more from him, and then now hearing this from Dave Roberts. So I think that's good news. We'll see how he makes it through spring and what it looks like, and I'll feel better about him if he's ready to play in the field. If he's DH only, that'll be a little concerning. But I still think Max Muncy is a good value at his like 140-ish ADP or whatever it is, and it's actually been trending down. So perfectly happy with taking him. I think the reward is worth the risk. I don't see it in the notes. Maybe I'm overlooking it. But another thing that Dave Roberts talked about today was Clayton Kershaw. I don't know if you have that in here, but and Kershaw spoke with the media as well. But it was basically everything's fine. Kershaw said the only way he was retiring is if the elbow wasn't fine. So the fact that he's back indicates that he feels good about his elbow. That's a good sign.
I did have something written down a little bit further down the rundown. Clayton Kershaw said he didn't pick up a baseball until January 1st. He's going to face hitters for the first time on Monday and thinks he'll be ready for opening day. So I actually thought that was pretty bad, like not picking up a baseball until January 1st. And he thinks he'll be ready for opening day. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into it.
Concern.
Sounds not too great.
I still think the reward there is worth the risk as well, with a 78.9 ADP at NFC.
All right. Steven Strasburg is prepping for the start of the season coming off thoracic outlet surgery. The Nationals won't fully know where Strasburg stands in recovery until the coaching and training staff gets a chance to evaluate him this spring. The ADP is 262.8. John Ross underwent surgery to remove a bone spur in his elbow. Joe Ross, correct. John Ross, football. A lot going on in football today, too. Joe Ross underwent surgery. He is out 6 to 8 weeks, removed a bone spur from his elbow. And Mariners pitching prospect Emerson Hancock is dealing with a lat strain. We do have quite a bit more. All right, I think we're probably going to run a little bit over here because of that, again, Josh Donaldson news kind of set us back a little bit. But let's talk about these signings in deeper leagues, Scott. Yusei Kikuchi, he signed a 3-year, $36 million deal with the Toronto Blue Jays over the weekend. He declined a $13 million player option back in November. And the Blue Jays are kind of interesting because they just turned Robbie Ray around. I don't think that they're necessarily going to do that again. But what do you think about the upside of Yusei Kikuchi here with the Blue Jays, Scott?
I mean, he obviously showed some upside early last year, actually made the All-Star team, 3.18 ERA, 103 whip in his first 15 starts, right at a strikeout per inning, but the swinging strike rate suggested there was more bat missing ability than that. But he collapsed in the second half, and his spin rates had a lot to do with it. The velocity dropped some too, but the spin rates especially so. About the time the sticky substance ban kicked in. And as things, he ended with a 4.41 ERA. He still has a 5.39 career ERA. I was a little surprised he declined the option with the Mariners. And I'm a little surprised he got a 3-year deal with the Blue Jays, because I'm still pretty skeptical, especially with the drop in spin rates in the second half last year. But, if he is good, then the Blue Jays are an offense you want him behind him. So late round flyer, I think, is appropriate for Yusei Kikuchi, but I wouldn't say he's a high priority for me.
There's a teeny tiny amount of Robbie Ray in Yusei Kikuchi. He also gets hit really hard, which not a good thing. That's not a good comp, but really good swing and miss pitches all the way across the board, really. His fastball has been a really good swing and miss pitch. Slider and changeup have both been good. The problem is just a lot of it seems to be command, and a lot of it seems to be pitch mix. And it just seems like there's just like his cutter was really good in 2020, and it was really, really bad in 2021. So there's also some consistency issues. I just think I have no trouble squinting and seeing a version of Yusei Kikuchi that's really good, and it's going to make me interested in him. I don't know if I don't know if I believe the Blue Jays know exactly what needs to be tweaked, but there are tweaks that can be made. Of that, I'm convinced. So I am interested in him.
ADP for Yusei Kikuchi is 350. So as Scott mentioned, again, a late round flyer, someone you can get with really one of your last picks in your drafts.
Yeah.
We had 3 middle infield signings as well this weekend. Josh Harrison signed a 1-year, $5.5 million deal with the White Sox. Many expect him to be their starting second baseman. Nico Goodrum signed a 1-year, $2 million deal with the Houston Astros. And then Jose Iglesias signed a 1-year contract with the Colorado Rockies. So again, these are deep league signings. Scott, any interest here? Harrison to the White Sox, Goodrum to the Astros, Jose Iglesias to the Rockies.
Well, I mean, just by virtue of the role he's going to play, Josh Harrison probably has the most fantasy appeal, and it's not that much. He didn't get double-digit home runs or steals last year as an everyday player. Nico Goodrum has flashed some interesting upside at times for the Tigers. And, there's a little bit of speed there, a little bit of power there. I could see him becoming relevant if, let's say he and prospect Jeremy Pena are competing for the starting shortstop job, because the Astros don't bring anyone else for shortstop, and Goodrum wins and he's in that lineup, and there's that, I believe he's a right-handed hitter, right? Goodrum.
I think he's a switch hitter.
Okay. Well, in any case, it's obviously a better situation than he's been playing in Detroit. So I think there's a chance maybe he could emerge as something halfway useful, but I think you're right to call them deeper league options.
All right. Yeah. Nico Goodrum is a switch hitter. I wanted to mention real quick, last year, the batting average bad for Goodrum, 214, 9 homers, 14 steals in 90 games. That's a 15 homer, 23 steal pace over 150 games. So, yeah, I mean, I think there is a little bit something there. I think that Astros still either bring in a shortstop or they make another move, but he is kind of interesting. Go ahead, Chris.
I don't think it's out of the question that Josh Harrison could hit like 15 homers in guaranteed rate field, just because it is such a good park for power. So, he's probably just like a guy who helps you with batting average, but I think there might be room for a little bit more. I don't think he's going to be mixed league relevant, but AL only for sure. And you know what, man? Jose Iglesias, I mean, it's Coors Field. Like, he might hit 300.
Yeah, with 8 homers.
Yeah, he might hit 300 with 10 homers and 6 stolen bases. And, like, he's a better real-life player than Garrett Hampson. The fantasy baseball community as a whole needs to just get past this Garrett Hampson thing, because we're always like, why don't the Rockies play Garrett Hampson? It's like, because he's bad. He has like a 60 career OPS plus. He's a bad baseball player.
What's dead
relative to Major League Baseball players? He's much better than any of us.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair to say. Josh Harrison, by the way, triple eligible on CBS, second base, third base, and outfield. So that definitely helps his value as well. Chris, Scott and I did an emergency podcast on Friday night reacting to Carlos Rodon and Clayton Kershaw. I didn't know, obviously you touched on Kershaw a little bit earlier, but anything that you wanted to add on Carlos Rodon going to the Giants?
I mean, the way I look at it is like there are multiple questions that need to be answered for Carlos Rodon, and this answers the first one. And the first question is he currently healthy? Past the physical, Giants gave him a not insignificant contract. They gave him a contract that made a anonymous GM whine to John Heyman about how much money they spent. So that's a strong bet that the Giants are making. That's a strong signal for us that he is currently healthy. The other question that he has to answer for me is, can he throw with the velocity that he did last season currently? The other question then would be, can he do that for a whole season and stay healthy? That's a question that we can't answer. That there's just no answer that we can get. But if we see Carlos Rodon throwing in spring training and he's hitting 100 miles an hour consistently like he was last season, then yeah, the upside is for him to be a top 12 starting pitcher. I don't know if you're ever going to get the innings that he needs to be that, but at least on a per inning basis, he can be as good as anyone based on what we saw last season, south of Jacob deGrom, I guess, because the fastball gave him the fastball jumping up to that 96 average, 98, 100 touching range is that it gave him the second pitch that he's been looking for, because his slider's been a major league caliber pitch since he was in college, but the changeup never quite developed. And so the fastball turning into a 30% swing and miss, 220 expected WOBA or 260 expected WOBA kind of pitch, whatever it was last season, a truly elite pitch, it changed his entire profile. And if he's still throwing in that range, then Carlos Rodon's going to be worth picking in the 35-ish range at starting pitcher, I think, maybe higher, because the upside there is just tremendous.
His ADP is 108.8 as the 34th starting pitcher off the board. Chris, do you foresee
probably
this?
higher?
You
would probably need to draft him higher.
You think this is going to climb?
Absolutely. I don't think there's any question Carlos Rodon's ADP is going to climb. I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to draft him at that cost, but I think you already have to move him up. This is good news. This is the first bit of good news we've gotten from him, around him. So, yeah, I'm going to put him just ahead of Pablo Lopez.
All right, let's get to some bullpen moves that happened this weekend. Alex Colomé signed a 1-year deal with the Colorado Rockies, and he's currently the 69th starting relief pitcher off the board with an ADP of 419.3. It's got Alex Colomé. I don't think he's very good. It's a terrible place to pitch, but I think that he is going to be the guy for the Rockies. So how high are you going to move him up your relief pitcher rankings?
Oh, let me remind myself what I wrote this weekend. So yeah, I mean, he's obviously not going to be a closer that's in high demand. But I don't think there's much doubt he's the closer. He eventually got the role for the Twins down the stretch last year and pitched better after losing it earlier. He was this reliable closer the 5 years prior to that. And he's clearly the best the Rockies have, because Carlos Estevez was not going to get it done. I think we all knew that. So I have him kind of in that same range as Dylan Floro, Joe Burrow. He probably deserves to go ahead of them just based on track record. Personally, I would just wait around for Dylan Floro, but I think Alex Colomé probably deserves to go ahead of him.
Okay. I did notice you said Joe Burrow in there, Scott, instead of Joe Barlow. So we've got football in the brain today, man. Joe Burrow and John Ross. What's going on? This is weird.
That's always on football, Scott.
I moved Alex Colomé up to RP 35. So it sounds like pretty significantly lower than you, Scott. I have him around like the Rowan Wick, Matt Barnes range. I don't know what the Red Sox are going to do yet. So I don't think he's very good. Maybe I need to move him up more. I'm going to be.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I guess it just depends how much you value this guy has a role versus this guy may have a role.
Yep. And speaking of having a role, Joe Girardi said Sunday that as of now, Corey Knebel is the Phillies closer. And the team did also sign Jerry's Familia to a 1-year, $6 million deal. Familia has 125 career saves. And I think that he could be involved if Knebel can't pitch back-to-back days. He's dealt with a lot of injuries the past couple of years. So keep that in mind. Knebel's the guy, but if anything were to happen, or if they don't want to use him back-to-back days, then Familia is probably going to be involved as well. Conflicting reports on Lucas Sims this weekend of the Cincinnati Reds. Apparently, he's behind at camp, but then Sims said that he's, quote, all clear regarding any potential arm troubles. Sims did deal with elbow issues last year, and the Reds bullpen was very frustrating. They had 10 different relievers with a save last season that was tied for second most in baseball, and the name that I've been pumping all offseason is Art Warren. He was really good last year, small sample size, but 1.29 ERA, 0.90 whip, a 19% swinging strike rate for Art Warren. Did have 27 saves in the minors as well. Chris, I know that you were excited about Lucas Sims. What do you think about this report we got over the weekend?
I'm going to keep him in like the low 20. I think he's either like he's 30th for me at relief pitcher. I think he's fine there. I don't have much interest in moving him up or down based on this news. I think he's really good if he's healthy. I think he's going to be much better than he was last year, but obviously there's a lot of risk, so you can't make him anything more than a late round pick, but I like him. I don't think the Reds are like a frustrating team because they don't want to settle on a closer. I think they were a frustrating team last season because all of their relievers were awful. And so if Lucas Sims is healthy and good, I think he's going to be the closer. If Art Warren is really good and Lucas Sims isn't healthy or he struggles, I think he can be really good. But yeah, it's concerning, but he's cheap, so it doesn't really matter.
Yep. It's hard to name a closer when no one's pitching well, right? So that was part of the issue last year for the Reds. Scott, what do you think about Steve Cishek? He signed a 1-year, $1.75 million deal with the Washington Nationals. He has 132 career saves, though he hasn't really been a full-time closer since 2016. Kind of submarine-y, sidearms type relief pitcher. Yeah. I mean, they just don't really have a lot in the back end of their bullpen.
No,
there's
everybody's
Tanner Rainey,
terrible.
there's Kyle Finnegan.
Everybody's terrible. I'm not sure Cishek is that much better though. And I doubt he'll be their first choice to close. He may wind up in the role because nobody else is getting the job done, but I doubt he's plan A for that. And plan A may not be on the roster yet.
Fair enough. Brad Boxberger signed a 1-year deal to return to the Brewers. He pitched really well last season. I thought maybe he can get an opportunity to close somewhere. And the White Sox signed Joe Kelly, adding to an already really stacked bullpen. Tony La Russa said he expects Craig Kimbrell to be on the opening day roster, but what else is he supposed to say at this point? So I hope you're lying, Tony La Russa. We could all use Craig Kimbrell somewhere else to help us out in fantasy baseball. Some other news items I want to quickly mention. Bryson Stott and Didi Gregorius will compete for the starting shortstop job for the Philadelphia Phillies. Stott had a really strong 2021. He's a top prospect in their organization. That translated well into the Arizona Fall League. Also, we had the Welsh on this offseason, and he's really excited about Bryson Stott. So a name to remember there. Luis Castillo will arrive late to Reds camp due to a flight/family issue. Dalton Varsho is viewed as the starting center fielder entering spring training for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Ketel Marte will be the team's starting second baseman. AJ Hinch said that Spencer Torkelson and Riley Green have a chance to make the team out of spring training. Torkelson was working as the Tigers' primary first baseman on Sunday. So lots of excitement there with those two prospects. Again, Torkelson and Riley Green. Eric Haas would work in a utility role this season in addition to being the team's backup catcher. So maybe more playing time for Eric Haas. Tanner Houck and Garrett Whitlock are both being stretched out, but are not locks for the rotation. Lewis Brinson signed a minor league deal with the Houston Astros. And finally, we get to the biggest news of the weekend. The biggest story that I could find. Ty Buttrey has reported and is retired no more. He is back with the Angels. Scott, do you have any thoughts?
Well, Frank, I once knew a man named Lorenzo, last name Gain, like mine, only spelled differently, no E. When last we spoke of a young man named for the way I eat my toast. Buttrey, Ty Buttrey. Spreaded, not sprayed. He's not the sort who fancies working into his 80s, apparently, for he retired in the off-season, never to play again. The game whispered to him like a breeze through an open window, and he answered back. He's back, and the world is Buttrey again. But truthfully, my mind isn't on young Ty right now, but on the heart of the Atlanta Braves, one Frederick Freeman. I've had on occasion the privilege of phoning Mr. Freeman and asked him on one such occasion what the cause is for the delay. He said to me, "You still haven't given up on me." I said to him, "Never." He said to me, "Well, Mr. Kane, you're in for a show." I said to him, "I have my popcorn ready, hot, and of course, Buttrey."
Great job, Scotty. Great job, as always. Nice little appearance there from our good friend Michael Caine, of course. Ty Buttrey is back, retired no more. Frederick Freeman, let's go. Let's make some moves.
Let's go.
Get back to Scotty's Atlanta Braves. Let's have some fun. And that is a perfect way to end the podcast. For Scott and Chris, I am Frank. Thank you all for listening and watching Fantasy Baseball Today. We'll be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.